Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Bullion. Our guest today is Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalists. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I wanted to get you down to talk about, like a lot of things that's happening right now in markets, what inspired you to start Nomad Capitalists, precious metals, and so forth. First, though, let's start off with, what inspired you to start Nomad Capitalists and how has your personal journey influenced the company's mission?
Well, Nomad Capitalist is a company that helps successful people get second passports and lower their taxes and protect their assets. It's kind of a one-stop shop for people who want to become global citizens who realize that the high tax legacy brand countries in the West are not going to be the places to be. But I think it's also a movement. And I mean, what inspired me was is 30 years in the making. When my father saw the writing on the wall in the Western world, he would always bring home articles in the Wall Street Journal and other newspapers saying, how Singapore had become the world's freest economy. And it wasn't that long before that I mean, Singapore was a backwater in the 70s. I'm sitting here in Malaysia and, they know better than anybody. I mean, Singapore was in bad shape when they broke away from the rest of Malaysia. And yet it became this great successful country. My father looked at these success stories. He looked at what they were doing in Chile. He looked at what they were doing in New Zealand. And he said, the United States and a lot of these Western countries that are bankrupt, they're cooked.
Hmm.
And he invented the five magic words: go where you're treated best. He said, when you're an adult, don't feel that you have to stick around and take care of your parents. And you should go where you're treated best. And so I got this permission slip almost 30 years ago, which was, don't think you have to stay in this country. No one country stays on top forever. And it's probably the end of these bankrupt countries. And I think what we've come to see just how prescient those words are. And so I meet people all around the world who come up to me and say, hey, I moved to, Colombia or Georgia or Malaysia or Thailand or who knows. I travel the world all because of what you talk about. And what I talk about is personal sovereignty and taking back your freedom and taking back your finances from governments that used to be in favor of, building you up as a successful entrepreneur, a successful investor. You keep the spoils of your labor. That's no longer in vogue, at least in the West. It's in vogue in Asia. It's in vogue in Dubai. It's in vogue in a lot of other places. But it's not in the West anymore. And so my message to people is, go where you're treated best and find a place that already respects and loves and welcomes you for who you are and what you want to be, rather than the place that you wish would work because that's where you're from.
Hello, my fellow silver and gold stackers. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It will really help the silver and gold community grow. It'll help this channel grow, and I'd really appreciate it. Back to the video. Absolutely. I'm from Canada. We have one of the highest taxes in the world. What would be your guidance for people in Canada? Just like what you were saying, just leave Canada, go to where you're treated best, or is there ways in Canada to figure that out? What would you tell people from Canada?
Why? So it's not just finances. And I ask people, finances, freedom, and lifestyle.
Hmm.
How do you allocate 100 marbles? Where do they go in each of these three buckets? And so some folks, they only care about lowering their taxes as much as possible. Some people care more about the personal freedom. I mean, Canada, look at what happened in the last 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
That's only going to get worse because people are increasingly desperate. When I go to Cambodia, when I go to Dubai, when I go to, Ecuador, I see an optimism in the people that I don't think you see in Canada. Everything I see on social media from the West is doom and gloom. People can't afford their rent. There's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And that's going to turn into policy. In the long run, it's going to become more confiscatory from the producer class. And so the lifestyle, I imagine, isn't that great. And by the way, if you're a single guy or even a single woman, I imagine the lifestyle really isn't great. I was just in Serbia a couple of weeks ago. Men and women, as much as they have typical men and women issues, they don't hate each other like men and women do in Canada or in the US. They're all on Tinder or whatever the newest app is and swiping, where there's just this war going on. It doesn't exist in the rest of the world. So all these things together, they work symbiotically. And so my question is, why would you want to stay in that country?
Right.
Other than it's normal and you don't know where to go. So there's two things you can do. Number one is you can have a plan B. This is what a lot of our clients call us and do. And what we have a lot of clients now doing since COVID is plan B, C, D, E. Multiple passports, multiple residence permits. When they zig, you zag. You got different places you can go. I have homes around the world. It's for the price of one beautiful McMansion in Canada or the United States, I can have 5 or 6 pied-à-terres in places that I love around the world. And no matter what happens, I've got a place to go. Socially, for my freedom, if taxes go up somewhere, I'm flexible. And so you can collect these plan Bs. Let's say you go to the UAE. Everyone knows Dubai. You put some money in the bank or you buy a property. Both of those things are going to condition you to start to think about what life could be like in Dubai. That's your plan B. But hey, now it could be a plan A. Now it seems real.
Right.
And when you do either of those things, you can now get a golden visa. You don't have to live there, but you can live there. And that golden visa is good for generally 10 years. So now for the next 10 years, you've got a tax-friendly place where people are motivated and they're hustling with better weather. And that's a place you could go. And you've already got money and or a home there. And so that's the plan B. If you build a bunch of those around the world, you can get residence permits in a lot of Latin American countries just by showing an income. You don't even have to put the money in the country. So you can get numerous residence permits, maybe a passport or two. And now you've got these places you can go when times get tough. And the more you make that seem real, the faster you'll get to plan A. What I did from the beginning was plan A. I don't want to live where I'm from in the United States. The taxes, the freedom, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I don't like dealing with the police, all those things, right? You're a law-abiding citizen, but it's just a tough, difficult life. And I had been traveling and I had seen life just seems better somewhere else. And so I just left. And yes, I immediately got to qualify for tax benefits. And so I started a business. The next business I started was Nomad Capitalist. And I've basically legally paid zero for all the years I traveled the world as a U.S. citizen. I gave up my U.S. citizenship eventually. And so now I pay zero personally, unless I choose to go somewhere and pay more. And I did do that for 2 years. I did choose to go somewhere and pay more, but it was still in the single-digit percentages. And so the answer is if you're in Canada, you can basically become a non-resident for tax purposes, which means you're not going to live in Canada full-time anymore. You're not going to have a lot of connections to Canada. You're probably not going to keep your home. There's a number of different things that you need to tick off the list. But once you do that, you can keep your Canadian passport. You can come back and visit every once in a while, but your main home needs to be somewhere else. And so if you're tired of high taxes and the culture and the dwindling freedoms and the social climate or any of the above, then yeah, I think the plan A is probably the better path, and you're going to figure it out as you go. And that's one of the things that we help people do at Nomad Capitalist. But you can set up a plan A for plan B for later, or you can just jump out there and start saving money right now. I'm in the offshore business. I think most of the domestic tax breaks are very inorganic.
Right.
The easiest way to save taxes is move somewhere with a tax rate you approve of. Get out of the Canadian system. We help people do that. Then go to a system that you like. Move your company to a system that it likes. So if you want to move to Malaysia, your company may move to Hong Kong. If you want to move to Panama, your company may move to the British Virgin Islands. They don't have to be the same place. But you want to go where you're treated best for yourself and then separately for your company. Where I'm from in the United States, all the ways to save taxes to me seem very inorganic. You're taking tax deductions at the end of the year. You're spending money you don't want to just to write it off. You're making investments you may not like just to save on taxes. Why not just go where you can pay what you want?
Hi, I'm Michael Piccioni, founder and president of Can-Am Bullion. At Can-Am Bullion, we are more than just a precious metals dealer. We are your trusted partner in securing your financial future. As an authorized dealer of the Royal Canadian Mint, we take pride in offering only the highest quality gold and silver products. And with our best price guarantee, you can trust that you're getting the most value for your investment. We offer free, no obligation consultations with one of our precious metals experts. Our commitment to excellence has earned us a 5-star Google rating, a shopper-approved seal of approval, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. These accolades reflect our dedication to transparency, integrity, and exceptional customer service. Are you ready to take the first step towards financial security? Contact Can-Am Bullion today for your free consultation. Let us help you build a brighter future with the power of precious metals.
Yeah, no, that's incredible advice. Do you have to keep your Canadian citizenship if I want to go and live abroad or go set up base somewhere else?
Well, most people do want to keep their citizenship. I mean, the US is the one country where they tax you no matter where you live, what's called citizenship-based taxation. Now, I lived under that system as an entrepreneur. You can get that tax rate down to zero, and then they changed the law back about 8 years ago. I probably could have stayed under the 0% because I've got a lot of foreign friends and people in my family, what have you. But if you are the average American, you're probably going to pay something closer to 8 to 10% these days if you're an entrepreneur overseas. And if you're into Bitcoin or you're just an investor, then you're screwed. So Americans have a tougher time. If you own a business that's remote, you can get your tax rate still pretty low. But everybody else, Canadians, Australians, Germans, what have you, you're generally going to keep your citizenship. You're going to declare yourself a non-resident for tax purposes, which is becoming harder and harder because more and more people are doing it, and they're more and more desperate for the money. So they're trying to catch you doing something wrong, right?
Right.
It's not just pack your bags and leave and hope the CRA leaves you alone. I mean, you have to go through a proper exit protocol. And by the way, the wealthier you become before you leave, the bigger the potential exit tax is. You have to pay them a tax for, here's what I made when I was in Canada. Here's what my business is worth, my stocks, my Bitcoin. And then you've got to pay as if you sold that when you leave. And so, we see people who wait too long. You want to leave when you have a little bit of money and your momentum is heading in the right direction. Once you have a lot of money, it's going to be expensive to go. So it's kind of a balancing act of like, yeah, I don't want to pay the fees to get a residence permit and this and that, but you're going to pay a hell of a lot more than fees for services if you leave once you have millions more. But to answer your question, Canadians are going to generally keep their passports. I think in the next 10 years, you'll see more Western countries trying to tax their own citizens. I've been saying that for years. There's some guys on the far left in Canada that have suggested it. France, for the last year and a half, has been very aggressively pushing citizenship-based taxation, what the US has.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you move anywhere else and you don't pay huge taxes, France will tax you under their new law.
Jeez.
And why can't Canada do that in the future? So while Canadians probably are going to keep their citizenship, I would see what other citizenship I can get, whether it's, hey, I have an ancestor from somewhere. My grandparents were Italian. I can maybe go and claim that passport. Or maybe someone who is Greek or whatever. If you've got a parent, grandparent, great-grandparent who had ancestry somewhere else, often in Europe, but also Latin America can work sometimes, claim that citizenship. If you're going to move somewhere, Ireland, for example, you might think, why would I move to have the same bad weather? But you can live in Ireland 5 years. You already speak the language. They have a non-dom tax program, so you can pay in the low single digits in many cases in taxes. And in 5 years, you get a top-tier European passport. So now you can live in any of the European countries and the UK as an Irish citizen. So at least you have, unlike Canadians, you can live in one country. As a European, you can live in about 30 countries. So at least you can move around.
Right.
Or you can go and do citizenship by investment. You can donate or invest your way to a passport, like buy an apartment in Istanbul, they give you a Turkish passport. Make a donation to St. Lucia, they'll give you a passport in about a year. So as a Canadian, I'm going to want to get a second passport through one of those means in case Canada ever comes down and says, hey, you know what? Starting next year, we're taxing you no matter where you live. You can't get out. You can walk into the nearest embassy somewhere overseas and say, you can have it. I don't want it anymore. And now you're out. And you have to do that before it's too late. So yes, Canadians have a pretty easy time as long as you exit the country for tax purposes properly. We've helped clients move to, I think, about 31 different tax-friendly countries. So there's one that fits every kind of profile: warm weather, cold weather, family friendly, single friendly, developed, calm. I mean, there's something for everybody. But I think you want to have a second passport. You need to have a second residence. You need a tax residence. You're going to need to move some of your money overseas and probably close down your local bank accounts. There are banks overseas that do offer Canadian dollars, as well as, of course, US dollars and other currencies. And if you have a business, you got to figure out how to move that out. And if you do all of those things, you can pay as little as zero tax, and you can make sure that nobody in Canada controls you. But you can't wait. When the U.S. changed the rules almost a decade ago, I had people calling me with 1 week notice. I said, guys, you should have listened to me. You should have got the second passport when I told you. It's too late now.
How long does the process take? Like 3 months, 4 months, on average?
To get a second passport, I mean, citizenship by investment is probably the fastest way to do it. It depends on the quality of the passport. I mean, the best affordable citizenship by investments that are open to anybody, as long as you've got a clean record, are in the Caribbean. There's 5 countries. I did St. Lucia many years ago, cost me $100,000. Now they've doubled or more the prices. Why did they do that? Pressure from the US and the EU. Those countries, they don't want people to escape the high tax West. So a guy like me who's saying, hey, go and make a donation to a peaceful Caribbean country that actually uses the money to help their own citizens build homes and roads and schools and not just waste it on wars. Hey, that's giving guys like Andrew a way out. Right. And we see that movement. You know, when you go to the U.S. Embassy, I got a story from someone. He said, I'm renouncing my citizenship at one of the embassies. They asked me, are you working with that Andrew Henderson guy?
No way.
They don't like you being free. I got a message from a former U.S. ambassador. He commented, we have on our YouTube channel, under his own name. We looked him up. He's a real guy. He works at some think tank now, sucking off of, that sector now. He's like, I hope you suffer and you live a miserable life.
Jeez.
What have I done to him? What have I done to him? What I'm doing is I'm taking money away. The productive class realizes they have options now, the way they didn't have before. And, people like me are telling them they have options. So, of course, the US and the EU, which are dying institutions, want their citizens to stay there and pay the freight. They need you to pay the freight for all of their mistakes, $38 trillion in debt. So the answer to your question is, not only is it now more expensive to get those Caribbean passports, which have the best travel value of all the second passports for the money, but now they have a mandatory interview. Now they're talking about maybe you're going to have to go and live there for a month or something like that. So it just keeps, these are not huge impediments. It's still worth it in the grand scheme of things. But when I did it, never went there, never did an interview. They just checked my whole background check, thorough due diligence. Okay, you're a good guy. Here's your passport. And I got it maybe in 6 or 7 months. It's going to take at least a year now. Citizenship by descent, there's huge spikes in interest in that. They were never that fast to begin with. That could take years. Naturalization, you got to live somewhere at a minimum. 3 years is like the extreme minimum. 5 years is normal in a lot of countries, 7 to 10, plus then the application time. So, yeah, you really want to be a year to a year and a half out front to make sure you get a second passport. Now, there are new passports coming online, like in Africa. I'm a big believer in the future of Africa. There's 4 citizenship by investments in Africa. The most interesting right now is Sao Tome and Principe. It's an island nation off the coast of Africa, and they're opening up, and it's $90,000. So it's the cheapest one, basically. Mm-hmm. And they're going to probably get it done in 4 or 5 months, door-to-door, paperwork and all. But if you're used to having a Canadian passport and you ever had to hand that back in to avoid being taxed into oblivion, it's not, the travel privileges are nowhere near as good with an African passport, whereas the Caribbean passports, at least it's passable. It's not quite as good, but it's reasonable. So, this stuff gets more hard and more expensive by the year. And so you might say, well, this guy's talking, I told people in the US for years, get a second passport. And then when this law passed in 2017, where they made it more difficult to comply with taxes as an expat, I'm telling you, people were calling me, you had 2 weeks to get your affairs in order.
Oh, yeah. That's
and people were saying, you can't do anything in 2 weeks, but that's what the politicians do, is they say, and they even actually said, when the law draft first came out, they had the first draft of the law, and it was going to go into effect 2 months later, basically. And what they put actually in the initial draft was, from the date of this draft, anyone a citizen, we're going to sting them.
Jeez.
I'm not sure that made it through. But it was like, hey, you had, under that, if that would have gone through, you had 0 days to prepare. So, my thing is, don't spend your last dime if you're a Canadian preparing for this. But spend some small percentage of your net worth or your income to get residence permits, a couple of passports, at least start with one. Go to a country like Georgia or Cambodia, put $1,000 in a bank account, right? Like, see what things can I start doing internationally. If you're single, date someone internationally, even if they live in Canada. Maybe they want to move back at some point. Like, what things can I do internationally to get myself ingratiated to this lifestyle? Buy a home somewhere else. If you're going to buy a summer home, don't buy a cabin in Canada. Go and buy something somewhere else. And then start to see, maybe that home you buy can get you a residence permit. Maybe that residence permit leads to citizenship. Maybe the citizenship means you can get a bank account. You
Right.
want to have these tools in your tool chest that you can leave Canada at any time. This is what the Chinese are so good at. Have a junk boat in the harbor, have a fast boat in the harbor with an extra set of papers and some gold coins,
Yeah.
because you can't trust local politicians.
Absolutely. Like this is incredible advice you're giving us, Andrew. Could you share your perspective on the role of gold and precious metals as a hedge in today's, economic environment, or what are your takes on gold? I feel like it goes great with nomad capitalists.
Yeah. Well, I've been a big believer in precious metals. Obviously, there's certain people shifted from precious metals into crypto. I like to do all of the above. I'm an entrepreneur. I have productive assets. I have growth stocks, also known as my business, and new things I will start. I have, yield stocks around the world that pay me higher yields, tax free, not in the US, not in Canada, but in Hong Kong, Singapore. And then I own some crypto, some Bitcoin, and then I own gold and silver. For me, yeah, sure, keep some around the house. But also you can vault it overseas in private vaults that are not part of the banking system. It's not reportable. For Americans, it's one of the historically been one of the rare ways you can legally hold non-disclosed assets overseas. In contrast to a bank or a brokerage account, I mean, gold was always more flexible. So, I like it for that reason. You can move your gold that you hold in your country. We've helped clients do this, and we've connected with some of our partners where they bring the truck to your house in Canada. It's all pretty private. They ship it to Hong Kong or Singapore or Switzerland or wherever you want it to go. And, I think it's a good thing. So, I think Asia is kind of the future for gold storage. I think there's more options opening up. I think Europe is becoming less and less private. I mean, they killed privacy for vaults in Austria a couple of years ago. That was kind of the last holdout. I think Asia is a good place. I think, if you travel the world, you'll see people in Asia still love gold.
Hmm.
I just saw Singapore gold purchases were up like 48% last year. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm a believer in it, and I look at what are the macro trends on a global level. I think if you're just watching the news in the U.S. and Canada, what are they doing? You're going to miss out. I'm reading all the foreign papers, and all these foreign governments are buying gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you're truly free, Andrew. Like compared to a lot of people here, a lot of us here in Canada or in the United States, there's that feeling of kind of like I like to say the word is like slavery of being a sheep, or not even just a sheep, or just being like cattle and being herded. And our goal, like my goal, is to be free, like financially free, especially on a cultural level. Um, the only thing is what I'm thinking is I feel like they're making it harder and harder for the lower and middle class to do this because some people live paycheck to paycheck. How are they gonna, put money abroad, or how are they gonna start to, go somewhere else? Because you're saying, like, let's say it's the $100,000 to make a donation, and then you can get a passport in certain places in the Caribbean. A lot of people in lower class, middle class don't have that, right?
Well, I mean, you're right, and I'll tell you this. I'm a guy who goes by his intuition. I read a lot of data, I read a lot of numbers, but I ultimately go with my intuition. And when I lived in the United States, I just felt like something's off. Something's off socially, and something's off personally. I mean, I'm a guy who has a totally clean criminal record, and you'd be driving to the street, and the police would just harass you because they just,
Yeah.
whatever. I can't say it happened that often, but I always felt like on edge, right? And I'm the goody two shoes of the offshore world. I like, playing by the rules, but it just felt like even when you do that in the United States or Canada or Australia, it's tough. I mean, I remember flying through Australia, and that's even worse than the US. I mean, like flying through the airport, you have zero rights. I mean,
Yeah.
they're sticking their hands everywhere. They're checking everything. I mean, it's, I mean, I was even flying to Australia the last time. You can't even take a bottle of water on board. To me, extrapolate that out into an entire culture. Meanwhile, I fly here in Malaysia and it's like, all right, drink your water, enjoy your water. I just think that speaks volumes about the culture and how
Hmm.
people say, listen, if you're not in most of the world, if you're not hurting anybody, all right, okay, we'll leave you alone. The Western world has become a police state, particularly the English-speaking Western world. I mean, what you post on social media now can get you in trouble. And I'm not saying some of that stuff, I don't agree with some of these people with their kind of extreme takes, but, that's what freedom of speech is.
Hmm.
And yet, now, I'm not saying you have extreme freedom of speech in Dubai or Singapore, but do you have that much less? And yet you have social harmony, cleanliness, very low, if not no taxes. Like what is the unique selling proposition of the Western world anymore? And so, to your point, if you don't have a lot of money, I mean, our business, we work with people who want to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on these backup plans. But my advice, if you don't have that, I mean, number one, you need to control your income. So
Yeah.
where can I work? Our company, we hire people all over the world. And so if an American or a Canadian came to us, we'd be open-minded to, hey, okay, you're going to move to Paraguay. Okay, cool. We'll pay you. We may not pay you a New York City wage, but okay, we're open to that. Our biggest fear would be you're going to wimp out in 6 months and want to go back, and then we've got to replace you. But there's companies like ours that want to hire people. There's people who are doing freelance work or starting their own business, especially now with AI. It's easier than ever. So what does it cost to live in some of these places? It's not as cheap as it used to be, but it's a lot cheaper than Canada. Find a place in Latin America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, where you can live affordably. Well, they'll give you a residence permit. I would say probably Latin America, if you have a salary now, you can qualify just by saying, here's my salary, give me a residence permit.
Right, right.
And so, Ecuador, Paraguay is maybe I was in Paraguay. There's some potential there. That's on my radar. Mexico is becoming very, very popular. I mean, there's a lot of places in the Americas that you can live if you could just show them, hey, I make $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month in income, US dollars. And then you go there, you cut your cost of living. In a place like Paraguay, the taxes are very, very low. And so, I mean, some of your biggest cost structures just cut right out, housing, taxes, all that. And then, you just got to find a way to make a couple grand a month. I mean, for me, like the economics work. The issue is the social safety net and, the family safety net.
Right.
But, I go to the hospital in Malaysia. I go to the emergency room. It costs $100. So, I mean, by the way, you can get health insurance in these places. It doesn't cost that much. So I think the bigger issue is not the actual economics. It's that, if you want to change the things in your life, you have to change the things in your life. You have to figure out, how do I have a remote income earning structure? And you have to figure out, how am I going to adjust to a different culture? I think, quite frankly, a lot of people in North America have an easier time moving to Mexico than moving to many places in Europe or Asia, because Mexico probably feels more comfortable, besides the language difference, than a lot of those places. Culturally, it is not that different from the United States on a global scale. But, maybe there's so many places to go. The issue to me is figuring out where you want to go, getting comfortable with it, and then sticking with it and not, crying about it once you move overseas and wanting to go back home immediately.
Yeah, and I feel like the mental block is there for a lot of people where they say, or they're like, clinging on to whether it's family. Like your dad said, the best advice ever would be go to tr where it treats you best. And I think that's incredible advice.
By the way, my dad, I believe he just got to Mexico. They live half time in Mexico. My father, when I was growing up as a kid, he wouldn't visit Mexico. I mean, he's a very smart, very global guy, but I don't want to go to Mexico. He looked at what I was doing. We talked a lot about what I was doing. And for him, he said, listen, I want to come home and visit my mother and this and that. Okay. So he didn't want to go so far. I mean, he looked at Malaysia. He likes it a lot. But for him, the best place for half the time was Mexico. And they got a beautiful home and he likes it there. He's like, you know what? I do feel more free. I do like the people here more. I do like my neighbors more. And I'm very proud of him. He's made like 20 friends. The guy's 72 years old. He's got like a group that he could like 20 of them go out
That's good.
and hang out in Mexico. He's got more friends than I've ever seen him have in his life. And so he did that because somebody in his life set the tone. That can be you. But I'll come
Wow.
back to your economic point. If you are in the United States or Canada and you can't figure out how to make $2,000 or $3,000 a month on the internet, then your country's not the greatest country in the world because they did not equip you with any kind of education or any kind of skills. You know, I have people working for me in Georgia and Colombia and Turkey and all over the world making two or three or four or five or $6,000 a month and more. If you can't figure that out, I mean that's kind of an indictment of the country.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely well said. Andrew, this has been such an incredible conversation. Like what a great piece of information and knowledge for people just to get even started, because I feel like that's the biggest step. But I want to thank you for coming down and speaking to the community and speaking to everyone here. I genuinely believe there's going to be a ton of people online here who's going to find it, really knowledgeable. But I want them to connect with Nomad Capitalists. Is there like, is just your website they can connect with you? Do you have social media?
Yeah, so the best place to go is nomadcapitalist.com. We've got a lot of free resources on there, as well as if you want to work with us, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. I wrote a best-selling book called Nomad Capitalist. Easiest place to find that is on Amazon. We have an event every year. This year we had the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak. We've had heads of state from Georgia, and Estonia, and Mexico before. We host that event every year. And then, we're on YouTube with over 1 million subscribers. We put out content multiple times a week. So, I mean, we're a lot of places. But the most important thing, I had an old client. He became a friend of mine. He was just at my birthday party very recently, and he was talking to some folks. He's like, just start. He's like, I
Yeah.
called Andrew. You just got to take action. I mean, however you do it, whether it's with me or whatever else, do something and take at least baby steps. Open a bank account somewhere. If you have to report it under the law of your country, please do that. But open a bank account somewhere. Maybe you buy a small property. You can buy homes in some of these Eastern European countries for $10,000 on some little farmland. I mean,
Right.
take little baby steps, whatever those are. Get your passport from your ancestors, whatever, to bring yourself closer to feeling comfortable with this lifestyle, so it no longer feels like the other.
Yeah, no, it's what tremendous advice you've given us. You've inspired me to take a step. So that's I really appreciate it. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming down. I'd love to have you back on in the future. But this has been really tremendous knowledge for everyone. Thank you so much, Andrew.
My pleasure.
Talk to you soon.